We have Ghost Hunting 101, how investigations actually work. So I think what we'll do is we'll start down there with Sharon and introduce ourselves and kind of our background with paranormal investigation.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Sherilyn Lambeth, and I'm a paranormal investigator and author. I work with the Charlotte Area Paranormal Society. I'm also author of Haunted Theater of the Carolinas and the upcoming Cryptids of the Carolinas, which will be out in July. And I've been investigating and researching and writing for about, maybe going on 15 years now. And then, of course, I'm also a Ghostbuster, which is my dog and pony show, but I've actually got some very interesting stories because of that. That's
Hey, I'm Jason Roach. I am author of The House on the Dead Man's Curve, which is a paranormal mystery thriller inspired by my personal paranormal experiences. I also write vampire romance. I own Gold Dust Publishing, and we do cater to our paranormal friends. So if you guys know Tally Johnson, we have his latest book out there as well. Investigating wise, I started about 2020 with Alex's team, and then took some time off and joined Great State Paranormal. So that's where I'm at now.
My name is Vernon Braswell. I am the founder of Three Rivers Paranormal Research and Investigation out of Gaston County. We are a fairly new group as a whole, but each individual member has been doing their own personal investigations for many years. And we were talking about it one day and like, hey, why don't we just start our own group? And that's what we did. So you can follow us on Facebook. Like I said, we're just getting started. We've got an upcoming investigation at the Devil's Tramping Grounds. We've already got it reserved and everything, so we'll be the only ones there. So we're looking forward to that.
Hey, my name is Alex Matsuo. I am a paranormal researcher, author, folklorist, getting more into the anthropology side of the paranormal. I'm the founder and director of the Association of Paranormal Study. I'm also a co-founder of the Children Clinic Parafest, as well as founder and co-chair of the Paranormal Research Symposium, which is an annual gathering in Gettysburg of paranormal minds, presentations, workshops, and all that good stuff. I've been in the paranormal pretty much throughout my whole life. I didn't start actively investigating until I was in my teens and old enough to drive. I founded my team in 2011. Oh my God, 15 years ago.
Time flies, doesn't it?
It does fly. In my recent years, I'm also a content creator on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook as The Spooky Stuff. In more recent years, I've pivoted away from actively investigating a lot to more of understanding what these experiences mean to us as humans and the human experiences and as a society. If you were part of the demonology panel and stuff previously, you'll know why that I stepped away from doing a lot of investigations these days. But yeah, that's basically me in a nutshell. I'm really passionate about history and folklore and ghost stories and exploring the unknown and what that means for us as people.
My name is Chris Carruthers. I am president and co-founder of Patapsco Paranormal Investigations and Research. We're based around the Baltimore, Maryland area. I got my start in paranormal investigation. Well, I got my start in my interest in paranormal when I was maybe only about 12 or 13 years old on the grounds of Gettysburg Military Battlefield Park. My interest has always been kind of geared to military history, so Revolutionary War, Civil War especially. My wife and I have been investigating for probably about 23, maybe 24 years.
Well, we met 2003.
Yeah, so we've been 2003. We've been kind of investigating since then. So kind of do the math there. And so about 23 years that we've been investigating together, and have investigated with multiple groups and doing. We've done a few private home investigations, but mostly have done a lot of investigations around Civil War battlefield parks. So that's kind of been my thing. I am a sensitive. I'm an empath mostly, so I can pick up on the emotion that is out on a battlefield, and sometimes I can pick up on a little bit more than that if I really concentrate on it. And I am also an aspiring author. I am starting to work on my very first book. which is dealing with being what I call a skeptical sensitive, which is someone who can actually sense that those things around you, but you're more of a skeptic in the fact that, okay, I sense this, but am I really sensing something that actually happened here, or am I not? Let's do the research and get some proof behind it first before I can actually say that this is what I've gotten. So that's what I'm working on right now. So I think that's a good start for everyone. Why don't we get started, since this is kind of a 101, I think probably the best foundation for anything on learning about the beginnings of ghost hunting is, what is it that actually sparked your interest in ghost hunting for the very first time? What was the first thing that really got you interested in the paranormal? Maybe your first experience with a spirit or a ghost or a cryptid or UFO or whatever that might be.
Well, my background is in theater and film, and I've done a lot of work in numerous theaters throughout the country, and pretty much every theater you'll ever go into is haunted, or at least has a good ghost story. And I do talk about this in my book, which is available on my table, by the way, shameless plug. But there's a lot of energy in a theater. There's the energy, there's the electrical energy from all the pieces there, the lights, the special effects. There's the emotional energy of the audience and the performers at their work. There's just a lot of energy in theater. And of course, there's often a historical context to the building as well. But theater people, we take our ghosts as par for the course. We work with them, we work beside them, we accommodate them. But I think my most striking theatrical paranormal experiences was summer I was working at the Lost Colony. Very familiar with the Lost Colony? Yeah, in a nutshell, the Lost Colony was the first British colony established in North America in 1585. It was on the island of Manteo, just off the coast, the North Carolina coast. 117 men, women, and children, British colonists vanished, just gone. And to this day, scholars aren't entirely sure what happened to them. But there's the Fort Raleigh National Site on Manteo, which is where the colony was, and there's also a play dedicated to the story of the colony at the Waterside Theater there, which is built at the actual site, which we thought that was a good idea. But it is, of course, for many reasons, haunted. And the theater itself is outdoors. There's two low-lying buildings on either side with the dressing rooms and the costume shop and everything. And there was late one night where I was working, we just finished a show, and I was working costume crew on the show. Now this was a big anniversary year of the colony's founding and the play, so as our costume shop designer put it, there was much spiritual unrest that year. But I'm working late one night in the hall, I'm sorting laundry, and it's a wooden floor, so I hear footsteps coming on the wooden floor, and I thought it was one of the other crew members. Pull my basket aside to get out of their way, continue working, the footsteps go right on by me with not a soul there, continue down the hall, and the door at the end of the hall opens and closes by itself. And I remember standing there even now I get goosebumps remembering it, but I remember standing there going, okay. Pick up my basket, walk into the costume shop, and the clincher of that evening was one of my coworkers with me saying, "Are you all right? You look like you see a ghost." Yeah. But that was probably the most striking paranormal experience I've had in the various theaters I've worked in, and that was really kind of what sparked me thinking, all right, well, I'm interested in finding out more about this. Who are the people that were here? What is causing this? Are they all just people? Sometimes they're not. That really sparked my interest in research and investigation.
So I've always had an interest in the paranormal ever since I was a kid. My favorite show growing up was The X-Files. Anything that X-File related was me all over in the 90s. But it wasn't until I moved out of my parents' house and into a house that actually was on Dead Man's Curve, and out in Statesville, and the house kind of had a mind of its own. There were obviously, you could hear dishes clanging in the kitchen, cabinet doors being open, screen doors opening and closing. All this was going on the whole time we were living there, just about every night. And it wasn't anything malicious, it was there, with no explanation. And then one night I was laying in my bed reading a book, and someone walked into my room and stood in the doorway and just watched me. And then they turned around and walked out for a good 5 minutes. And I thought it was my roommate at the time. And so I walk out there and I'm like, why did you come in my room? What'd you want? And they're like, I didn't come in there. And then I realized that they were wearing a white shirt, tan shorts. And the person that was standing in my room was wearing a purple shirt and blue jeans. And there wasn't enough time for them to go and change and whatever. So that really sparked my interest even more at that point in time, where I started doing my own research and things to kind of figure out what that was.
Someone apparently is agreeing with you, Jason.
Yeah.
As we watched the light flicker right in the middle of your story.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do choose, I'm a little biased at this point, that's my own personal opinion. I haven't approved to back this up, but it is what I feel. My grandparents' farm was a half a mile down the street from this house, and my grandfather died on that farm. And so I do feel that at that time, that was him coming to check on me. And again, there's no proof of that. This is, like I said, this is spiritually what I feel was happening, because I was going through a very tumultuous time during that. So, and then 20 years later, well, 2013, so 13 years later, I met Alex through an online group that we were both a part of, and we became friends and exchanged various stories and stuff like that. 2020 started us working together.
So for me, I was born and grew up in the mountains of North Carolina, up near Cherokee, a little small town called Waynesville, North Carolina. And up there, the Boojum is a Bigfoot-like creature. He was big, and my granny would always tell me stories about the Boojum. Don't go up there, the Boojum's up there. And then when we moved to Gaston County, as a teenager, get with friends, and one of the local legends there is the Kathleen Smiley at Lincoln Academy, around Lincoln Academy. And so this was in the 80s, so it wasn't long after it happened. But the local legend is that she was mistreated badly and killed at the Lincoln Academy. The legend says she was tied to the tree with barbed wire, but the actual police report said that it was a drop cord. So that's kind of where the legend and the actual event kind of differ a little bit. But as teenagers, we would always, get with friends and ride out there just to see what we could see or hear. And it's a spooky place at night. Not gonna lie, it's a spooky place at night. So that's kind of what sparked my interest.
For me, I had my first experience when I was about 7, 8 years old, and I was visiting my family in Kentucky. So this was Appalachian Kentucky, like very Appalachia, and it was, of course, a dark and stormy night, as most stories are, like with that. So I grew up in Southern California, and so for me to see a rainstorm like what you would see in Kentucky was like foreign to me. I was like, whoa, that's a lot of rain. And thunder and lightning, so I kept looking outside to watch the storm. And one of the times I looked out, there was a cloaked figure outside my mama's property, and this was, her house was on a hill, on a couple of acres, so it was fairly robust. Not that she was rich or anything, this was Catlettsburg, Kentucky. So I was like, that's weird. I'm like, huh. And so I closed the curtain, and then I was curious. I was like, is that person still outside? And I looked outside, and they were still there, but they got closer to the house, to my window. And my grandma's brother also lived on the same property too, and I'm like, could that be Uncle Glenn, or could it be my cousin JR? No, they were all inside because I could see the light was on, and also this figure was just standing outside. And I also noticed that the fabric of their clothing wasn't affected by the wind either. Like the wind was blowing, but nothing was moving. So I was like, okay, this is getting a little weird. So I closed the curtain again. And by the way, in Appalachia, you don't open your curtains at night. there's a lot of things you don't do in Appalachia. And
A lot.
again, got morbidly curious, so I opened the curtain back up and the figure was even closer to the house, like almost to the window, and I went, nope, and I closed the curtain, ran to my bed, lay down, and the bed I was sleeping in, so my mama and I would share a bed when we came to visit. My grandma would take the main bedroom. This mattress didn't sink, it tilted. So whenever my mama got into bed, the bed would tilt and I would slide down and she would stop me from falling off the bed, which was great. I got into bed, put the covers over me because, that's the shield of protection right there. And the bed tilted and I slid completely off the bed. So the bed tilted and I'm like, oh great, Mama's here, I'm safe. Nope, I slid completely off the bed. And the bed stayed tilted and then it moved back in place. And I'm like, huh. So I was both terrified and intrigued. So I kind of became a spooky kid after that. My mother very much discouraged anything paranormal. Come to find out afterwards, she was dabbling in the occult and everything. And my conservative Christian mother, by the way. Now the occult, not a bad thing. But imagine my surprise going through her belongings after she died and finding divining rods and tarot cards and crystals, and I'm like, Mother, because I was very much in the broom closet with her. And then I guess my more defining experience, what that got me into the research side of it was, I'm gonna make this very long story short. I was in a really bad car accident New Year's Eve 2005, which resulted in a hospital visit, an ER trauma room visit. The person in the trauma or in the room we were in the same room, but he was in the bed next to me. He ended up passing away. Ended up sticking with me for 8 months, and by this point it was 2006. Keep in mind that the paranormal community that exists today did not exist in 2006. It was very much like Ghost Hunters, the TV show, had just come out. If you wanted to find anyone spooky to help you research or investigate or anything like that, you could look through the phone book, but most of the time it was just a little So my mother and I ended up getting help from the Greek Orthodox Church, because Baptists that I was part of, the Southern Baptists weren't going to touch this. The Methodists were not going to touch this. The Episcopalians were not going to touch this. We didn't want the Pentecostals to touch this. So one of my mom's friends that she had confided in about the situation had said, well, we could probably, Alex is part Greek. I'm like a quarter Greek. We could get help from the Greek Orthodox Church. So, so had the Greek Orthodox Church come in. All this to say, the attachment lasted for about 8 months, and that's what got me into paranormal research and wanting to investigate, but also help my community and be more of a resource to people. So, so those were my two big defining moments. And in between there, I had theater ghost sightings and weird things happening, because I'm also a theater kid. I have a master's in theater, so yes, theaters are haunted. Oh yeah.
100%. Myself, I'd always kind of, as a kid with your age in the single digits, of course you're going to be drawn to anything that says, ghosts in this particular place that you happen to be going to, and I just thought it was kind of cool to read. Never really got 100% interested in it until I was about 11 or 12 years old. And my father had taken me on a trip to, my mother and I on a trip to one of our favorite places to go, which is Gettysburg. We were touring ourselves around. We didn't take an official tour. We just kind of wandered around the different points of the battlefield ourselves. And we were at one point on the top of Little Round Top, and we were on the side of Little Round Top that's facing out toward Devil's Den, the wheat field, the peach orchard, just looking out across all of that. And at one point I'm off to one side, and there were maybe a few people up there. There weren't a lot because it was in the middle of the week. And I just happened to be looking off to one side near where Devil's Den was, and I look down and I see a full regiment of reenactors out just doing column movements, facing movements, flanking movements, and things like that, just marching and doing drills. And I was fascinated by this, and I sat there and watched them over for a while, and then I stopped and thought, my mom would really find this kind of cool. Let me see if I can grab my mom. So I ran to find my mother, and I grabbed her, and I said, there's reenactors over here, come take a look. And she followed me back over, and we walked down over to the spot that I had been standing, looked down, nobody there. Nobody getting into cars, nobody splitting off and doing their own things, whatever. There was maybe a few people in like t-shirts and jeans and shorts and stuff like that wandering around, but nobody in uniform. So I got really confused at that point, and I found someone nearby who happened to be a licensed battlefield tour guide at the time, and I kind of tugged on his shirt and I said, "Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you." I was like, "But I saw some reenactors down there, and I went to grab my mother, and now I'm looking down there and I don't see them." And he just kind of looked at me, and he looked around for a second, and he looked at me again and said, "So you've seen them?" I said, "Who?" He said, "You've seen our Phantom Regiment here." And I heard that, and that immediately made me go, wow, I actually saw something here. And then later on, growing up in my middle school and high school years in Biloxi, Mississippi, down on the coast, I lived very close to New Orleans, and the big thing down there is the feu follet, which is spirits that are, you find out, especially around the swamp areas, and they show up as these balls of light that just drift around on their own. And I had heard stories of them before, of course, but one time I got to go on a swamp tour in the evening, and in the evening I did see the feu follet. So little things like that just really kind of made me really intrigued about the different things that are around and what you can see, and I really wanted to get more into it. And then of course, also being a theater kid, I act even to this day on stage and on screen. Very much so. I work in about 3 or 4 different little theaters in the Baltimore area, and every single one of them, we've got at least one spirit in all of them, which is why in most of your theaters you will find we'll have something called a ghost light that is left on at night when nobody's there, and that light is left on for the ghost that's there. And if you don't have a ghost light, the ghost there is not going to be very happy with you, and they're going to pull some crap on you. So you leave the ghost light. It will be like Motel 6. We'll leave the light on for you. So that kind of really got me interested in the paranormal, and then finding groups that I could be with. And my wife Karen and I got to be part of a group called Beltsville Ghosts for a little while, and then we also got to research with a group called American Battlefield Ghost Hunter Society, which went around to local battlefields in this area, and we did.
That was back when the battlefields didn't hate the ghost people, and
you could actually go out there at night.
And then pay a little bit of money to get a ranger to walk you around. And
then finally we decided, you know what? Let's create our own group. So that's where this group came about. So that's pretty much kind of where we started. So everybody, or every group obviously has their methods of investigation as far as how they send their folks out, how they get everything set up. So whether you're part of a group or whether you were just kind of on your own and doing your own thing, what is your method? Let's start off by, what is your method of finding a location to investigate? Not going into the whole thing of somebody actually coming to you and say, "Please, my house is haunted, can you please take a look at it?" But obviously, in the meantime, we want to go to places that we know are haunted, and we want to see about doing an investigation there without going into an abandoned place. Please, for the love of God, don't do it. Don't go into an abandoned place and just sneak in on your own.
Don't trespass.
No,
Yeah, don't.
no. That's why people start to get pissed off at ghost hunters, because, oh, you're the guys that trespass into abandoned places and knock everything down and cause problems. Don't do it. But what is your method of finding a location to actually investigate? And then once you have found your location, what is your methods of actually mobilizing either yourself or your team in getting evidence on location?
Well, I can certainly speak for the Charlotte Area Paranormal Society, and we're fortunate. The team was founded in 2009, maybe a few years before that. I joined in 2009, sorry. But we're fortunate that we do a lot of fundraising paranormal investigations for historic sites. I think most of you guys here too have done that or participated in those. So we are very lucky that we are able to get into many of these historic sites and do public investigations that people can come and join us at. There are also a lot of sites around that are known in the community to be haunted or have stories that we want to try to get into. And as Chris said, sometimes the owners or the people involved aren't necessarily happy with that. Just a brief aside, quite a few years ago, and this made national news, or national news probably, there was a plantation down in Louisiana, and I can't remember the name of it, but some so-called ghost hunters got in one night, completely no permission, on their own, were goofing around and burned this like over 200-year-old home to the ground. And so that's one of the reasons that people aren't always happy with ghost hunters. But our team, and I think all the other folks here too, are very respectful. We're respectful of the site. We're respectful of the people who are in charge of it. We're respectful of the spirits. And that's another thing. We won't talk about some of our Zach Bacon's but yeah.
Perish the thought.
Yes. But we will generally, if there's a site we want to investigate, we will absolutely reach out to the person who's in charge of that site, whether it's an owner or a property caretaker, and introduce ourselves. You know, we have references from many of the historic sites we've worked with, and just basically say, hey, we're not crazy ghost hunters, we're just genuinely interested in your site. And more often than not, that works. I mean, people have responded to saying, you know what, we'd actually be interested to find out if there's something here. And so we have been able to get into some sites that way, and in some ways continue with those sites. The Hugh Torrance house in Huntersville that's near here, that's a Revolutionary War era home and store. And we got into that through our work with another historic site, and they are connected to one called Cedar Grove, which is a big former plantation home next to it that has not before really been opened up to investigation, and we were able to get into that through our work with Hugh Torrance. So we kind of create a chain, I guess you could say, and that has worked well for us. So.
And for everyone's edification, by the way, that plantation